Hey, it's Tony Brueski, and this is our week in review over the weekend, taking a look back at some of the most compelling conversations and stories that we've covered for you of the last week. Brand new episodes back Monday morning, bright and early, 5 a.m. here on the podcast.
This is the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Brueski,
featuring retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer.
Let's go over to Maya Kowalski and what's going on there. We just saw some testimony just the other day of an individual who was one of the therapists, Betty. Her testimony revealed her presence was constant and at times sometimes invasive, even taking photos of Maya in her underwear and admitting to listening in on sensitive conversations with family members and legal representatives as they basically detained Maya for 90-some days. Betty said that the directives to do those sort of things weren't just, hey, I want to take pictures of a girl with her underwear, but they were directives that came directly from the Department of Children and Family Services, which is kind of interesting. And it was her job to make sure everyone complied and adhered to its stipulations. What's your take on Betty and her involvement in this? Because there's some other bizarre testimony that she had given in her deposition. We'll talk about that in a moment. Let's start with that.
It's so concerning. This is just one of those cases that you just look and you can't believe it. You can't believe the treatment of this child and certainly the people who were charged to understand and to, that have the education and the background to be able to evaluate such cases, just having so much autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, their word was the word. And having free reign at this sort of decision making for this child, that's a case that it is truly just almost evil, I think, in terms of the decisions that were made for this poor child.
That's what it feels like. I mean, you hear the term Johns Hopkins and you think, oh, that's going to be a good one. They know they're good research. They a lot of good things, and there are, and I'm not trying to discount the goodness of that organization, much like we were talking about religion earlier. Not everyone in that organization is a bad person, but clearly there were some very bad people at this specific hospital for some period of time. It does make you wonder how much further out this goes into other hospitals all over our country beyond just Johns Hopkins, with someone being able to yield power the way that we saw it yielded in this case, especially with Dr. Smith, and simply being able to talk to a family for just a few minutes and having the power to say, you are not going to see your daughter until we say it's okay, if ever again. No judge, no jury. How on earth how on earth did they get to that point where they're able to yield such blind power?
It's so wrong, and I hope this case starts to put in check a system of balances where an individual can't have that kind of power. For one person to be able to say this kind of abuse took place, and so therefore we're just going to remove you, as you mentioned, with no judge, with no jury, with no real evidence from both sides being presented, is unfathomable. And what they put the mother through, what they put Maya through, the husband, I mean, the fact that, the mother took her life, I think, just believing there was no way she was going to ever see her child again. It's perplexing. And all we can hope is that this changes. And like you said, the name a chance. My brother attended Johns Hopkins. It is such an esteemed and so difficult to get into, not only that university, but to work within their physician program. And how did this woman, creep in and then continue sort of this reign of autonomy that I had never heard of before?
It is shocking, and it seems that Dr. Smith was kind of ruling the roost there. What I was surprised, number one, that she existed and was able to do what she did for so long. But then you start to see the others that are working underneath her, or at least with her, and a lot of them seem to kind of play along with the game of what the leadership is saying. And we often look at situations like this, and a lot of it does come down from the top. If there's bad leadership, it's going to infect those below. One of the statements that was made by Jack Kowalski, Maya's dad, in testimony at the trial, saying that she stated that she used to come in, we're talking about Betty coming in to the room of Maya, and she would slap her leg to see if she was in pain. That's number one. I don't know what sort of doctoral practice that is when somebody has a condition, as it was example with Maya. Then it also says that she wanted to adopt her. She would tell Maya that she wanted to adopt her, that her mother was in a mental home, and that she could adopt her and be like her mother while at the hospital. Is this the words of someone who is really just disconnected from reality and what's appropriate to say to a child when their parents are not present? Or is this something even weirder?
I think, and I think this will come out. I think that she had major emotional and mental issues going on, and that could be in part why she had such a disconnect with reality, as you put it. No doctor should treat a child like that. I mean, the emotional roller coaster Maya was on with all these assertions and the ill talk about her mother. And like you said, even the physical, slapping somebody with the condition Maya had, for your listeners that don't know. I mean, she suffered from severe pain where they described that, a feather could land on her leg and it would feel like a hammer, being hit. So can you imagine the pain she felt being slapped on the leg? That's why it's so significant in this particular case. So it just makes no sense, Tony. And I truly hope justice is served on this one and lessons are learned.
Why do you think they went on for so long like this and wanting to go down their own path at Johns Hopkins, even though Maya had been dealing with this for years? She already had many treatments. She talked to many doctors. They were backing up all of this. This wasn't just parents showing up saying, hey, I Googled this and I've been, self-medicating my child for the last 5 years in the back of our trailer. It wasn't that at all. They had these facts, but they seemed to just almost pretend like they did not exist and put their blinders on and went down their own road. It's just baffling to me why one would want to do that.
I think part of it was ignorance on the diagnosis she had, it not being very common. And perhaps initially they were truly concerned. And then I think there's so much with, as you said, the name Johns Hopkins, this reputation they have. And so at a certain point, it became, we're right. We're not going to look at anything else. We're right. For saving face, for saving reputation, we're going to stay down this road. And to me, that's what it looked like. They just were, compelled to do that because of very self-serving reasons.
It's almost like a God complex. And maybe Dr. Smith kind of has that. I know she just retired the other year, and so much has come out about other cases in which she made bad decisions. One even where the father was put into prison for more than 300, jail for more than 300 days before the charges were dropped. But she definitely did tear apart families. Her comeback to that is, well, I've been here for, I think, 20, 30 years it was, and I've seen more than 3,000 cases, and if only 13 of those are complaining, and I'm paraphrasing here, that's not such a bad record. But I mean, there's always going to be mistakes that are made, especially when you see that many people. But the gravity of those mistakes and at which you can destroy things to such an extreme level and be so flippant about it is shocking. It's almost like, hey, I was a pilot or I owned an airline for 30 years and only 13 planes crashed out of all of those. Pretty good, huh? Should there be more repercussions for these individuals who were involved in this? And maybe can there be more repercussions? I know she just settled out of court with the family, but this, I don't know, this seems like it goes beyond just civil matters. This seems like criminal behavior.
It does seem like criminal behavior, but finding a statute where the criminal or where these actions meet criminal standards is the issue. And of course, beyond a reasonable doubt is going to be difficult in this case because of her arguments. I was trying to do the right thing. This was my read. I'm very educated. I've seen all these cases and I've been right 90% of the time. I'm sorry for the times I wasn't right. So I think that's why, from a criminal aspect, it's, would be difficult to overcome. But I'm glad to see some monetary, punitive, hopefully punishment against her. And like you said, she's already settled in one such case, or in one part of the case.
Mm-hmm.
And, you just hope that more people come forward, because for those who have come forward, just think, Tony, of all those who haven't,
Yeah.
who were wronged, but just don't want any involvement, don't want anybody else coming after them in the system. They probably don't trust the system at all after this.
And for good reason.
So,
I mean, especially if you've moved on with your life, you've gone through the nightmare. Maybe it is, technically the right thing to do, to go and raise your hand. But if you don't want to keep going through that nightmare that you just survived and maybe had your family ripped apart in, nobody's going to want to go back in that pool. It's especially if they see that, well, maybe this case will take care of it. But yeah, there's got to be far more than just the 13, I would guess.
Yeah, I believe so, judging from everything we've learned so far.
Want to listen ad-free? Want advance access to all of our interviews before anyone else?
Become a True Crime Today Premium Plus subscriber on Apple Podcasts.
You get every episode commercial-free,
so you can binge on true crime
until you can binge no more.
Search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts now, or go to our podcast page and sign up now.
More of the Hidden Killers podcast next.